Today we will solve quadratic equations by completing the square. So here are the steps to completing the square to solve a quadratic equation. The first thing you need to do is write the equation in the form x squared plus bx equals c. So you want that constant on the other side of the equal sign. Then you need to find the b over 2 squared. After you find that number, you're going to add that to both sides of the equation. That'll give you a perfect square trinomial on the left side of the equation. You'll factor that, take the square root of both sides, and then write and solve two equations, the positive and the negative square root. And we'll look at a few examples of what that looks like. So here's our first example, x squared plus 4x equals 21. So the first step was to get it in the x squared plus bx equals c form, and it is already in that form, so that's great. We don't have to do anything for step 1. Step 2 said to figure out what b over 2 squared is. So let's find that. B is our 4. So it's 4 over 2 squared. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So we have 2 squared, and that gives us 4. All right. Now it says to add this number to both sides of the equation. Because what we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side to keep it balanced. So I'm going to add 4 to this x squared plus 4x. And I'm going to add 4 to this 21. All right. Then the next step was, well, let's clean this up a little bit first. X squared plus 4x plus 4 equals 25. The next step said to factor the perfect square trinomial. So this is now a perfect square trinomial. X squared plus 4x plus 4 is the same as x plus 2 squared. Next, we need to take the square root of both sides. So that cancels out that squared right there. So now I have x plus 2 equals positive or negative 5. And then the last step said to write and solve two equations, one with the positive and one with the negative square root. So what that looks like, x plus 2 equals 5, or x plus 2 equals negative 5. So I'm going to solve each equation separately. And I get x equals, what do I get? 3. Let's be 2. That should be a 3. So I actually end up getting let's get this corrected here. Minus 2, minus 2. Okay, x equals 3 or x equals negative 7. All right, let's look at another example here. All right, what about x squared plus 6x minus 6 equals 0? Well, our first step is to get it in x squared plus bx equals c form, and that is not the form that it's in right now. So for this equation, we just need to move the constant number to the other side of the equation. So now I have x squared plus 6x equals 6. Now I need to find out what b over 2 squared is. So that would be 6 over 2, because 6 is my b value. 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. Now I have to add that 9 to both sides of the equation. X squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 6 plus 9. So on this side simplifies to 15. And this is a perfect square trinomial. We know it is because we did completing the square to make a perfect square trinomial. So figure out what it is. It is x plus 3 squared. Now our next step, take the square root of both sides. And I get x plus 3 equals the positive or negative square root of 15. Because I don't know what that exact value is. And moving forward, unless otherwise told, we want to just keep it in square root form. We don't want to plug that into the calculator and get this weird decimal number. So now the next step is to write and solve two separate equations. The positive and the negative square root. All right, solve each one separately, and I get x equals negative 3 plus the square root of 15, or x equals negative 3 minus the square root of 15. And that's as simple as we can make it. It does not simplify any more than that. Let's look at another example here. All right, what if we had x squared plus 2x plus 20 equals 0? Again, we need to move the constant over. So now I have x squared plus 2x equals a negative 20. I need to figure out what my b over 2 squared is. And that's just going to be 1 because b is 2. 2 divided by 2 is just 1. 1 squared is 1. So now I have to add the 1 to both sides. Now I need to factor my perfect square trinomial. And then I take the square root of both sides. But this is a negative number. I can't take the square root of a negative number. So for this, there's actually no solution. If you get to the point where you're ready to take the square root and it's a negative number, stop there. It's no solution. All right, let's look at one more example here. All right, let's see. We have 2x squared plus 5x minus 10 equals 0. Well, first we need to get it in that x squared plus bx equals c form. The first thing I'm going to do is move my constant over just like I've been doing. And I get 2x squared plus 5x equals 10. But this isn't just x squared anymore. There's that a value. We don't want that a value. So we need to divide everything by 2 to get rid of that. So now we just have x squared plus 5 halves x equals 5. Now we need to figure out what b over 2 squared is. So remember, when we have a fraction divided by a fraction, we just multiply it by its reciprocal. So 5 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4. And then when we're squaring a fraction, we square the top and we square the bottom. So now we take this and we add it to both sides of the equation. So now we have x squared plus 5 halves x plus 25 over 16 equals 5 plus 25 over 16. But remember, in order to get these added together, we need a common denominator. So we need this to also be over 16. And the way we would do that is we'd multiply 5 times 16, and then we can put it over 16. So we're going to go ahead and factor this perfect square trinomial. And really what you're doing is you're just finding this value here. This value is always the plus whatever. So plus 5 fourths. It's not x squared, it's just x plus 5 fourths. And then the squared goes here. Equals 5 times 16 is 80. 80 plus 25 is 105 over 16. Take the square root of both. Now I have x plus 5 fourths equals the square root of 105 over 4, and of course that's the positive and the negative. Set up the two equations. Or all right, so subtract 5 fourths. So now x equals, for this one, it's going to be the square root of 105 minus 5 over 4. And I get x equals negative square root of 105 minus 5 over 4. So those are my two different answers. With that, your assignment will be page 579, numbers 21 through 30. Happy problem solving!